Welcome, everybody. It's time for Talkback, brought to you by Bulls Eyewear, Missoula's only certified master optician on South Reserve, right across from Larchmont Golf Course. Selway Armory, located on Stockyard Road, Montana's premier firearms dealer. Karis Property Management. If you own rental properties and you're ready to save time, money, and stress, give them a call at 543-9798. Knife River Residential, have them install new or repair your home's present asphalt driveway, concrete driveway, or sidewalks. Call 532-5250. And by Hamilton's Denture Center. Over 30 years of practice combined with the latest technology, the best fitting dentures. Call 363-6000 to visit denturecenter.biz. Okay, here we are. It's one of our favorite times of the year. We love talking politics on Talkback. John King, our show producer right there, done another fantastic job and has arranged three city council candidates.
But I am one short, so we will get the fourth candidate on eventually.
Okay.
But I only have so many microphones in here. You can watch us on the video stream now. So you know there's only four, and we have four candidates for Ward 4, conveniently.
Yeah.
And we're going to start our discussion with Jesse Ramos, who's in studio right now, and he gets the easy softball question, which is, where the heck is Ward 4?
Okay, so Ward 4 is up Whitaker Drive, and then you so Pettit Creek Canyon all the way to Hillview, and then down to South Avenue with a few zigs and zags within there. But that's the general area.
Do you have the golf course there?
We do.
I'm sure you have to do some heavy campaigning there.
Yeah. I don't want to, but I have to.
Yeah, well, that really is the definition of being a straight shooter. If you can't hit straight, you better not play that course, right?
Oh, that's very true. And I probably shouldn't play that course that often.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, John.
Well, you and Peter might hook up sometime, because then you can fetch each other's balls instead of just Peter wandering
Actually,
off
the
alone.
only reason they call it golf is because all the really good four-letter words were already taken. So that's my view. But anyway, go ahead.
So, Jesse, tell us why you're running.
So when I first started down the road of the campaign, I was very concerned about the city budget and the city finances. And with my background, I'm a financial services manager and wealth manager. And I was just very concerned about the direction the city was heading. And I think that this was evidenced most strongly last night with the $25 million, quote, rounding error that the city had. So that was one of the main issues. But there have been so many other fiscal issues that I've seen that just don't make sense. If the city budget belonged to any one of my clients, I would be fired so quickly and probably go to prison.
I read a Missoula Current piece on you, and you called it an Enron-level accounting error.
Well, in the financial services world, if there's a $25 million error that I had made with my clients, I would be in prison for the rest of my life, right alongside Martha Stewart. So
wasn't it Everett Dirksen, the late Everett Dirksen, that said you get $1 million here and $1 million there? After a while, you're talking about some real money, right?
Yeah, exactly. $25 million could fund a whole bunch of people's retirement in my world, that's for sure.
So where do you see the basic problem with city council when it comes to making these rounding errors? I mean, do you just lay this at the feet of someone like Dale Bickle, or do you lay this at the feet of the people that drafted the resolution, the budget resolution? Where does it start and end, and how do you fix it?
Well, that's a great question. I think the answer is threefold. I think first and foremost, you have to start at the top with the mayor and his vision for the city. Right now, we have total appropriations of $209 million, as we learned last night after the little whoops by the city council and the mayor. So that's the largest budget ever passed in the history of Missoula by millions of dollars, yet they're still trying to raise property taxes. So that tells me that they have a spending problem. They do not have a revenue problem. And secondly, the second part of that problem, I think, would be the city council not knowing what they're voting on. I was in a city council meeting a couple weeks ago where I said I felt like they weren't being open and transparent, and John DeBari said, Jesse, I think we are being open and transparent about this. And then Michelle Cares said, actually, I chair the committee, and this doesn't make a lot of sense to me. And then Mr. Wilkins said, yeah, this doesn't look right to me. The special assessments, when we voted on them 12 years ago, were supposed to be just for small little projects, and now they become an additional tax. And the mayor reminded them all very curtly that you all voted on this budget 4 weeks ago unanimously. You should have brought it up then. And I couldn't agree more with the mayor in that sense, that the rubber stamp council has to go. I think that so many times they just vote on things to keep the status quo, and they don't really understand what they're voting on.
So it's one thing to oppose a current system, but it's sometimes harder to come up with specific things that you disagree with inside the system and the way it operates. So let's go through some quick history of Missoula and see where you would have voted. So when it comes to things like tax increment financing districts, do you support them generally? Sometimes, never?
I would say on a very, very rare occasion, but the problem with that is that if you give them a little, they always try and take a mile. With these districts, it's always, if you let them in just a little bit, then all of a sudden you have the situation we have now. They were originally supposed to be what I was talking about, where it's just supposed to be for the rare occasion, for emergency type situations, and now all of a sudden it's just blown out of the water.
Now, you might want to, just for folks who have just tuned in for the first time or don't understand what the term tax increment financing means, can you kind of explain that for us?
So tax increment financing, I'm not the best at describing the exact terms on it, but I might defer to Peter to give the listeners a little bit better explanation of that, because I don't want to try and butcher it.
Yeah, Peter. No, he's pointing at me. Okay, tax increment financing districts.
He's studied it. I haven't. So.
Are basically areas of the town that are set aside, and once the revenue for that area reach a certain point, instead of that money of the growth going into the general fund for all of us to share in and to go to our local schools, et cetera, that money gets poured back into the district to special projects. For example, the bridge on the south side of Missoula, or Cabela's, or other design and redevelopment issues. It's usually used as a technique to try to improve an area that seemed to be blighted, an area that's run down or dilapidated and can't get back on its feet for through the private sector for some unforeseen reason, because maybe your city might be a bad investment. There's a bunch of reasons to use a tax increment financing district, but it seems that, to me personally, that Missoula uses them very frequently for all kinds of reasons, sometimes even when there isn't a dilapidated area.
How many are there at Missoula?
I think there's 3 big ones.
Okay.
One by the baseball stadiums.
Right.
There's the one by the bridge. That's a huge one. And there's another one, maybe you know, Jesse.
Is that downtown? Where the...
Might be along the river.
The riverfront.
Yeah, it's along the downtown area, right along the river.
Okay, all right.
And the problem with these urban renewal districts is that they're sometimes they lock the taxpayers in for a very, very long time. As you know, some of these urban renewal districts go out all the way to 2040. So they're literally mortgaging our futures in these urban renewal districts that are just pouring tons and tons of money into things like the bridge, which cost $5 million is what the bonds were issued at, but they were issued over 23 years, bonded at 4.35%, which is $7 million. $7.9 million is what that bridge cost.
At the grand opening of that bridge, I personally asked Mayor Engen, I said, now, are anybody's taxes going up over this, with this? And he said, no one's taxes are going up. This is part of the tax increment district. I keep hearing people saying that our taxes are going up. They are not. It's all part of the plan in this tax increment district. So no one's taxes are being raised because of the bridge. Is that a true statement?
That is not a true statement. It is, I mean, I guess it depends on how you spin it. In political jargon and political terms, you might be able to sneak away as a mostly true on PolitiFact, but in reality, it's not the case. The taxpayers are carrying the burden of that load. That is all taxpayer funded. Those urban renewal districts are. And I've also heard that it was from the Tiger Grant.
Yeah, part of that was funded by the Tiger Grant, but which extended all the way to Lolo.
Yep. Part of that, the Milwaukee Trail, most of that was funded by the Tiger Grant. But the bridge itself, you can look online with on the resolutions online, and we issued bonds for $5 million at 4.35% interest rate, bonded until 2040.
Let's go to some of your other stances. One of the things that people wonder about the city of Missoula is whether or not it is a little money hungry and encroaching on the private sector in a number of different ways. One of those ways is the Mountain Water Company, most notably, but also Eco Compost, and now most recently looking into the grave business. I wanted to get your comments on that when we get back from the break.
We have a break. We also have 4 lines open. If you have a question for Jesse Ramos running for Ward 4, give us a call right now. Lines are open at 721-1290. 1-800-568-5309, or you can make your question or comment on our Facebook page. We'll be right back. But 21290 is the number. This is Talkback, Western Montana's only live interactive radio talk show. John King's over there. I'm Peter Christian. We have a Facebook comment for Jesse. Go ahead, John.
We had a John question follow-up, which is, what are your thoughts about the city's approach to private enterprise?
I think that There's not many people that would disagree with the fact that a city should own its own water company. However, the aggressive manner in which it was done by demonizing the water company so much, Mountain Water provided good service to the citizens of Missoula for many, many years, and I feel like this was all this demonization was just to justify the outrageous legal expenses of taking over the water company. But in general, I do not think that the government has any place in the private sector. I think that the government's role is to regulate the private sector and to create an environment in which the private sector can grow and prosper, but never to compete with it.
And do you feel that it is so right now we've already gone through the acquisition of the water company, already gone through the acquisition of Eco Compost, and now are on our way towards doing something different when it comes to gravestone setting. I know there was a very close vote just last night. Did you happen to witness that?
Yeah, I did. I actually got up there. So the members of the city council, when I first got there, there was only one member of the council during the comments that said that they were going to vote no on it. And there were a lot of people up there, a lot of councilmen that said, well, I kind of like this, but I kind of don't like this, but I'm still going to vote for it. This has gone on long enough, this, that, and the other thing. And I went up there. I was the last person to speak after a lot of owners of these local businesses gave really impassioned speeches about how this is going to affect them. And I went around the room and I looked at every council member and said, please, I urge you, every one of you that has had doubts and has expressed these doubts during your public comments, please change your vote to no so we can get something better. And as the votes were going around, Ruth Swaney was the first one to tip, the first domino to go, and she said no. And then Julie Armstrong voted no. And then Marilyn Marler changed her vote to no. And then last but certainly not least, my opponent, John Wilkins, changed his vote to no. So now we have a 5-5 tie, and I'm really excited at this point. And then Mayor Ingen says, this resolution has passed. I vote yes. He broke the tie and voted yes on this resolution. So now the city cannot sell monuments. However, they are still cutting into a big piece of the private sector because at the cemetery, at the Missoula City Cemetery, now only the cemetery can set stones and liners. Only the cemetery, the private sector is not allowed to compete in there. And they've created an inexperienced monopoly. They don't have the kind of experience that Rick Evans and Bob Jordan have to do this sort of thing. So I think it's a disservice to the customer to not give them options.
All right, let's go to phones.
Let's get to the phones and say good morning to Jane. Jane, you're up first. Good morning. You're talking with candidate Jesse Ramos. Go ahead.
Hello, Peter. I heard you all talking about urban renewal districts, and I just wanted to provide you with some supplemental information, if you don't mind.
Well, actually, the question I asked was, what's the difference between an urban renewal district and a tax increment area?
Financing district.
None. An urban renewal district is a geographic area.
Okay.
Tax increment funding, that's TIF, is actually the funding vehicle by which the money is accounted for.
All right.
So they're the same thing.
They're often referred to interchangeably.
The zone and the mechanism.
Right.
Right. But the point I wanted to make is that in actual fact, over the years, the city has approved 7 urban renewal districts. One of them, which was down in the Caris Park area, has expired. But we have 6 ongoing urban renewal districts. Urban Renewal 2 is an area, and it's really hard to describe this because of the irregular outline of the city of Missoula, but Urban Renewal 2 is over probably the intersection of Wyoming and Russell is the heart of it. Then Urban Renewal 3 is the one that runs all the way down Brook Street to the Southgate Mall. Then there is the Front Street Urban Renewal District. The fourth one is Riverfront Triangle. And then there's one that's been created recently, North Reserve to Scott Street. And then there's the Hellgate URD, which is down with Kiwanis Park. Or excuse me, that's the Front Street URD. It's down in the East Missoula area, East Broadway area. So that's the 6 ongoing urban renewal districts. So a big part of Missoula is covered by urban renewal districts at this point.
It's probably a better question to ask which parts of Missoula are not covered by an urban renewal district.
Yeah, the open space is not.
Oh, that's good. Well, that's good to know. Yeah.
That's a silly answer. I also just wanted to tell Jesse that I watched him on last night's city council meeting, and you made a difference, sir. And I wanted to thank you for being the person who stood at the podium and really questioned the city council and let them know that there are interested citizens who are observing what they're doing. And they just need to be aware of that. And I think there are a lot of people sitting around that city council table who want to do a good job.
All right.
But voting yes on everything the city proposes doesn't meet that definition.
Jane, thanks for the call. Appreciate that. So
Thank you, Jane.
All right, these actually go really quick, just 30 minutes.
Yeah.
I know if you haven't done it before, it might feel like a long time. But before we run out of time, tell us some of the issues, things at the top of your mind when you run for city council. What do you talk to people when you knock on their doors and chat them up?
Well, one of the reasons I got into this race is because in the financial services business, I have a lot of clients that are living on a fixed income right now, Social Security, pension, and annuity, and those products don't go up every year. As we know, the COLA, the cost of living adjustment for Social Security last year was 0.03%, and the property taxes went up nearly 4% last year. So where does that difference come from? A lot of these seniors are getting taxed out of their homes, and a lot of my clients have urged me to go. They know that I have an interest in the city, and right now...
When you're talking about senior issues, you're supposed to look at Peter, not me.
thanks, John.
I know the gray in the beard is deceptive.
I know I'm the oldest guy in the room, but don't rub it in. Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but that's the primary issue I got into the race, was just because I had so many clients urging me to try and do something, and I'm not married, I don't have kids right now, and now I feel this is a good time to dedicate a part of my life to public service. I've been complaining about the city for years, and I felt like it was finally time for me to step up and try and do something about it.
Are there any specific areas within the council? I know that there's lots of different committees. Are there any, should you win, are there any committees that you would like to be on?
I would like to be on all of them.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
I would like to be on every single one. And I guess another primary issue of focus, I've gotten to know a lot of members of the veterans community recently, and the veteran suicide rate in the state of in Missoula is the highest
It's
veteran
horrific.
suicide rate in the state of Montana, and the state of Montana has the highest veteran suicide rate in the entire country. And I spoke to Donald Trump's Secretary of Veterans Affairs, David Shulkin, a couple weeks ago, and I told him that Missoula had $184 million in appropriations, which it was at that time. I lied to the secretary. It's actually 209 as of last night. But and I said that the city hasn't allocated a nickel of money to veterans specifically. In places like New York City, they allocate 2 to 3% of their budget to veterans issues, and especially in an area where we are with the suicide rates the way they are, I'd really like to see that addressed, because why can't we spare $100,000 for vets out of $209 million? And more than that, I've been fighting for a Veterans Advisory Council in front of the city council for weeks now, saying that it works really well. All it is a team of local veterans leaders that get together. They have their own committee. They vote on their leaders, their president, etc. And they go before the city council, and they tell the city council what's going on, where the needs are, and where some of the services are in the private sector and nonprofit world, that those veterans can get some help.
We need to take a quick break. Come right back. We'll get Sam's call on, and I want to say thank you to Jesse for being with us. We'll be right back. Okay, we're back on Talkback. 721-1290 is our number. I want to real quick get a call from Sam. Sam, you're on with candidate Jesse Ramos. Good morning.
Good morning, Peter and John. How are you doing?
Good. What's up?
Well, candidate Ramos, I had a question this morning. First of all, thanks for having him on today. I just wanted to ask briefly what you're hearing from the citizens on affordable housing. I've got several donors to my nonprofit that have had to cut back due to concerns on their ability to stay in home, and I wondered if you could comment on the effect of the city budget on renters and students and young people, how they could look at these tax increases. And then secondly, if you could explain a little bit more about your vision for this Veterans Advisory Council.
Okay, thanks for the call. So real quick about affordable housing.
So on the issue of affordable housing, I don't know if you all read the Missoulian questionnaire, but my opponent and the incumbent says the only way to affordable housing is through government subsidy, and I couldn't disagree anymore. I think that things that the city has control over, the two things that the city has control over are impact fees and property taxes. And the impact fees obviously affect people looking to purchase a home, and the property taxes obviously affect the renter, because that ultimately does get passed on to the renter through by the landlord. They don't eat the cost of that, and nor should they. They pass that on to the renter. And the only way that that's ever going to happen is if we kind of find control over our property taxes without having to raise them every single year. I know that this year is, quote, an exception, but that's what I would say for affordable housing.
We have exactly a minute left. So as much I appreciate the second half of his question, you kind of addressed veterans issue just a minute ago, but you got a soapbox for a minute here. So tell us why we should vote for Jesse Ramos.
So I'm a change. My opponent has been on the same amount of time as the mayor has, and most Americans support term limits. In fact, 80% of Americans support term limits. And another opponent in the race has already donated money to Mayor Engen's campaign, and I feel like I have a lot of financial knowledge. I'm surrounded by the brightest economists and wealth managers of our time, and I think I could bring real value if you guys let me put some of that knowledge to work for the city government and for the city budget, and kind of break up that 12-0 vote that we always see on the city council. I think that we need some diversity of thought, and I really hope for a change, and that's why I'm asking for your vote, is for a change for the good.
Go ahead, John.
Peter and I are not the brightest accountants and wealth managers that you must be referring to. Other people.
Oh, I'll trick you guys in.
Oh,
there.
all right, cool. As long as we get the benefit of a $25 million mistake, we'll all be good.
Do you have a website?
I do. It's jramosforcouncil.com, but the most active way to find me is Ramos for City Council on Facebook. That's where I post a lot of videos and content and
Terrific.
Ads.
Appreciate you being with us. Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, we will continue. Have another candidate coming up at the top of the hour. Stay with us.
All right.
Welcome back, everybody. It's hour number 2 of Talkback, brought to you by Bulls Eyewear, Selway Armory, Karis Property Management, Knife River Residential, and Hamilton's Denture Center. It's kind of a political forum day. We have candidates from Ward 4 joining us here in the studio this morning, and the incumbent, John Wilkins, is here. And good to see you again, sir. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Well, welcome to our, and this is not your first time, not your first day on the rodeo, right?
No, not my first. I want to just say good morning, Missoula. So.
You bet. All right, go ahead, John.
Yeah, well, let's get started. You're the incumbent here. How long have you been in Ward 4?
I've lived in Ward for about 39 years.
So you've been there longer than I've been alive. So that's a good start. When it comes to working on city council, how long have you been in city council?
I've been on city council 12 years.
Okay. And over that time, what do you feel you've learned that has made you want to stay there?
Well, I really enjoy working with people, and I really enjoy working with Ward 4. It's really dear to my heart. So Ward 4 is just a great neighborhood. I always say it's the best neighborhood in Missoula. So, and I guess everybody that represents any neighborhood says that, but I think it is. It's got the best schools. It's just a great place.
So you've been through the city council through all the, basically the past 8 years. I'm sure you have lots of comments and thoughts about how things have moved up and down. When you look at the way that city council is operated, are there any things that you would change, or that you think we can do better, or do you think we're on the right path?
Well, I think the things that I would like to see change, and I think we could do better, is the whole infill issue. That's actually what got me started in city council, because in my neighborhood, it's my immediate neighborhood is single family, though we have apartment buildings and et cetera in Ward 4. But they were starting to change the lot lines and letting people build houses in the backyard and approaches on the alley. We had a couple of those, and that's what really got me going. I didn't think that was right. They weren't following zoning regulations. You need to have 5,400 square feet to build a house on, and it was cutting that down. Finally, I went to the state legislative and got the zoning law changed a little bit, so they have to adhere to the zoning. So that more or less stopped the boundary line relocations.
That stopped the infill process, right?
Well, it did not stop the infill process, no, but it did stop one part of it.
So
That's
how do you
what's
see the infill process occurring now, going on?
Well, I think, established neighborhoods, I think they need to leave them alone, and no matter where it is in the city. Because people bought into that, and that's what they expect to live by. Infill is probably necessary, I think, like in the old sawmill gulch, what they did there. Infill is probably good there. It's close to downtown. To me, infill is you should be able to walk to get a carton of milk. You should be able to walk to get to a park
You mean an infill area?
in an infill area.
Okay.
And we're not really doing it that way. I mean,
Hmm.
you-
Well, I think the attempt at infill is probably an attempt to address the difficulty of finding cheap rent or a cheap place to live in Missoula. I think that's a major concern for most Missoulians. It's not very easy to live here on a fixed income or even a low income.
I think that's an oxymoron, John. Cheap place to live in Missoula.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't think there is a cheap place to live in Missoula.
So when it comes to getting property or a place to stay, what are some of the solutions you might see from City Council?
Well, the solutions, I guess, is to subsidize. If you're going to have low-income housing, you're going to have to subsidize, or maybe you take some surplus city property and let that go for housing. It's the land cost in this town that's so high. And every time you shrink zoning up to a little less square footage to build a house, you up the price of that land.
So right before you came on, Jesse Ramos, who's running against you, of
Right.
course, he said that that the difference to subsidy is to lower taxes. The lower property taxes would make things more affordable. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I don't think that's a nice thought, but I'm not sure how you accomplish that. If you're going to subsidize something, that increases tax.
Exactly. So he was
So-
saying instead of a subsidy, lower property taxes.
I would love to lower property tax, and but I just don't see it happening with the services that we provide in the city, not unless we start cutting some services. And when you do, people get in an uproar. So what do you cut?
Hmm.
The lower money has always been my aspect of it. You're studying things. We study things too much. We pay huge amounts of money to study things. And maybe we could do that in-house. I mean, we do have engineers that we hire, and they ought to be able to do some of these things. That's my main thought on that.
Okay, we have John Wilkins here in the studio. We'll take a quick break, come right back. All four lines are open. He's the incumbent in Ward 4. If you have a question or a comment, all four lines are open. It's 721-1290. You can also make your comment or your question on our Facebook page, and we'll be right back with more of Talk Back here in just a moment. And we're back on Talk Back. 721-1290 is our number. 1-800-568-5309. Peter Christian, John King, and incumbent John Wilkins joining us from Ward 4. And just real quickly, before we get to Kevin's call, there was a big to-do, basically, about the city budget. There's $25 million extra dollars, kind of an oops, mea culpa type thing. What is your view of that? How did it happen? And should someone be held responsible for that mistake?
Well, it was quite a oops, that's for sure. I'm not really understanding it yet, and I hope tomorrow during the budget committee that we're going to understand a little bit better.
Is that the committee of the whole?
Yeah, the
Okay,
committee
right.
of the whole
Okay.
party. I'm not quite sure it was $25 million that we have to come up with, or that it was already there and we voted on it the first time, and then it didn't come up later on. So
Okay.
this is something I'm going to have to study, but I'm not happy with it. I mean, it should have been out, and I don't know. I guess I look at the financial people that they didn't do this right.
So it's my understanding that a citizen was the one that found the discrepancy. Do you know how it came about that we found out that the money was missing?
I don't know that for sure. I know that Dale Bickle is the one that told us about it last night. And that was the first time I I had heard that and knew that.
Okay.
Okay, let's get Kevin on the line. Kevin, you're on with John Wilkins. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'm just curious how the city is going to make up from the lost property taxes from mountain water acquisition.
Okay, thanks for the call.
He wanted to know, how will the city make up from lost property taxes because of the mountain water acquisition that took off money out of the tax rolls, is I think where he's going with that, because it's no longer a private enterprise.
Right. Yeah, my understanding is the city is going to pay those taxes, but as the years go on, it'll decrease some, and hopefully we can make them up somewhere else. But that's what we were told that was going to happen. You remember that there's almost $3 million that went out of the mountain water to investors that are going to stay here. So that's going to help with our schools and that sort of thing too.
One of the things that I was curious to ask you about, when it comes to urban renewal districts and their use, do you think that they're a tool that we are overusing, or is it something we should continue to keep using?
I think we are overusing the urban renewal. I also think that they were a good tool, but we only should have so many at a time. It upsets me, especially that pedestrian bridge over Reserve, that we had to increase that urban renew district for another 30 years. And it was ready to sunset. And what happens when it sunsets, then them taxes start going back to the city coffers, and you know, it's divided up between schools and all that.
Back to the general fund.
But back to the general fund. And that's one reason why the general fund is, you know, every year we've had to increase taxes just to keep our services up. And so urban renews are good, but you can overuse them. And I think we have now overused them.
Do you know, from the city's point of view, whether or not, like, how decisions are made about who benefits from an urban renewal district? So there's a perception that if you're wealthy and connected in town, that you might be able to get money from the MRA and get into an URD and, you know, have a boom time for your business.
Well, I'm not sure you have to be wealthy to get that. In fact, and I'm sure you don't. The thing is you developers get it, and it's not for their project. It's for the sidewalk, or it's for moving utilities, or something like that the city would probably have to do down the line anyway. But to get that business in there, which also increases taxes, that's where the MRA helps with that money.
But it does cap the expenditures that you would put into the rest of the general fund are now going back into that area to brighten it, make the walkways nicer, wider, give it a better, I don't know, area view. Sometimes it even does facades of buildings, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm not sure about facades of buildings, but it gives us, it helps us tell a developer what we would like to see. In other words, you look down Russell Street and the building, there was some new buildings built there that when you go down Russell, all you see is like the back of the buildings. And if you had to walk that stretch at night, you have nowhere to step in to be safe or whatever. So I think the MRA does good. And yes, all the money that when you start these districts, the taxes are froze, what the city gets, and any taxes beyond that stays in that area to help improve that area. So like I said, I think it's a good tool, and but we're overusing it.
So do you think it's more of a carrot to try to attract new business, things like that?
Yeah, once that area starts getting new buildings and stuff, it is a carrot to attract new businesses, which also raises the tax base in them areas. So.
Okay.
So I was talking with my mom the other day. She was very upset because she couldn't pay her water bill with a regular withdrawal.
Online, yeah.
Well, what's going on with that part of it?
Well, I think
do you know what's going on there?
I think they're trying to fix that, from my understanding. But
well, my wife was told by the folks at Missoula Water now that probably won't be till November or December when they'll be able to accept online payments. And I'm going, what's so tough? You know, I don't have a payment online service, but I'm imagining if we spent $88 million or $140 million on a project like Missoula Water, Can we just make it a little more convenient to pay our bills without having to walk in there and write a check?
Oh, I can understand that, but you got to get all the customers into a
Database. Well, weren't they already there?
Get it? No, they were, but they weren't in the right database that would do that. So
okay,
November isn't that far away. So
I understand.
I'm looking forward to that myself. But everything when you first start is
it's bumpy.
How you do it? Yeah.
Okay.
Now, before we acquired the water system, the mayor assured everybody that water rates would not be going up. Is that still what you foresee?
I keep asking him, and he keeps telling me, no, they're not going to go up for, the foreseeable future. So,
all right.
That's all I can tell you on that. I'm hoping they don't go up.
Well, if there is a vote to have them go up or down, where do you find yourself sitting?
Well, first of all, you got to look and see why are they going to go up? Is our maintenance not enough money for maintenance? It's got to be the reason. I think it would have to be a pretty good reason for me to vote yes on that. I don't think I would probably vote yes. But
well, let me ask
you never know until it happens.
Would it require a vote of the city council to raise those rates?
Yes.
It would?
Yes.
Okay.
Anything to do with the Missoula Water Company is supposed to go through city council.
Okay. Well, we're up against another break, 721-1290. Our guest, John Wilkins, here in studio. He's the incumbent in Ward 4. You have a question or a comment, we'd love to hear from you, either on our Facebook page or give us a call at 721-1290. We're coming right back. Hey, thanks for joining us here on Talkback. It's City Council day, and we've got John King over there. I'm Peter Christian, John Wilkins. You guys spell your names the same way, Jon. How about that? John Wilkins joining us here in the studio. He's the incumbent in Ward 4, and we have Will on the line, so let's get Will on first. Good morning, Will. You're on Talkback. Hi.
Good morning. I have a question for the councilman, and that is the mayor is always known for casting a pretty wide berth around city council elections, and the rumors are that he's not supporting you in this election. Do you care to comment on that?
Well, my whole time on city council and election, I've never asked for an endorsement from him. I've never received any money from him. Endorsements to me, I should be endorsed by Ward 4. I don't have to be endorsed by anybody else. So I don't go out and seek that.
So the mayor hasn't endorsed you, and you haven't asked for it, basically, is your answer.
No.
Let me ask, has he endorsed any of your opponents?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Now one.
Oh, my opponents, my immediate opponents?
Yeah.
I don't know that answer, and I don't think probably he has.
Okay. All right.
So do you know why? Is there some kind of disagreement going back with you guys?
That he does.
Why would he endorse an opponent of yours?
I don't think he has.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I misunderstood the question. I don't think he's endorsed.
He's
offered to endorse me, and I just said I'll take your support, but I don't want your endorsement.
One question that has always intrigued me is when I watch city council meetings, and I realize there's a lot of things that are done via formula. Okay, there's a consent agenda. Do you agree? Unanimous consent. But when it comes to votes in city council, it's very rare that it isn't either 12 to nothing or 11 to 1 or whatever. In other words, the perception is that whatever the mayor wants, the city council gives him. How do you respond to that criticism?
Well, I don't think that's entirely true. I know I seem to be a minority in there because I like to be the one that don't vote on certain things.
Okay.
But in the past, I can say that was really true. So they followed an agenda. I have no agenda, so I don't know what more I can say on that.
Okay, so you're basically an issue by issue guy,
right?
Okay,
and sometimes I don't even decide that issue till the vote comes up. And last night was one of them. It was the cemetery stuff. I thought that maybe we could get a compromise in there and both sides, but that didn't seem to work. And then there was another subject on that was really bothering me. So first I said yes, that I would support them. And then I kept listening to the arguments, and I changed my mind and said no. And what was kind of funny last night, half of us said no and half of us said yes.
Huh.
So the mayor had to.
He got to step in and be the Mike Pence for the moment,
yeah,
right?
that's right.
So when it comes to the city and its, and we're talking now about the cemetery. You ended up voting no on this measure last night. There's a perspective for many of us in the community that the city is moving out into different realms where the private practice used to rely. So for whether it's the cemetery or eco compost or Missoula water, that it's getting hungry for more business, I guess. I just want to get your take on where do you draw the line? What is the city's job and what is a private sector job?
Well, I think that the city should stay out of the private sector job because that's
you voted for the water system. You voted for eco compost.
Okay, so I voted for the water because I believe Missoula should have owned their own water. At the end, when I saw the price, I was in shock. But I still think that in the future we'll be very pleased that we own our own water. Eco compost, the sewer plant was bringing the sludge to eco compost and paying an ungodly amount a year. So, and the land was right next to the sewage company, and if we ever had to expand, that would be part of the land. So
for the sewage treatment plant.
Right.
Yeah.
So that was my reason for voting yes. Though then again, after I voted yes and found out that their equipment was either leased or falling apart, and we had to buy all this new equipment, I wasn't happy with that neither.
So it seems to me there's a tradition of the city moving into private areas and paying more than it even expected to pay for it. And now, as a taxpayer, we're left handing holding the bag.
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with that. Yeah, we should have done more diligence on the eco compost to see what their equipment was like and stuff. So that stuff is not cheap. A front end loader is not cheap.
So when it comes to it, I mean, you were on city council at the time,
right?
So who do you hold responsible for these decisions that end up costing people more? Because they're the people that are costing are everybody that lives in town.
Because it sounds to me like there wasn't a lot of due diligence taken before the final papers were signed. Like, why didn't whoever was in charge of this know that the infrastructure or the equipment there wasn't up to snuff and needed to be replaced before the papers were signed?
Yeah, and I agree with that. I'm not sure who was responsible. I know we did a study on when they bought this thing to see how it would pin out and all that stuff, but I never heard anything about equipment when all that was going on. So. I guess it's the people that we hired to do that study.
Well, John, we are almost out of time. If you want to take a few minutes to wrap up, tell the people why you want them to vote for you, why you want to run for Ward 4.
Well, primarily I want you to vote for me because I love Ward 4. I've worked for all the citizens in Ward 4, including garbage problems, lawn problems, party house problems,
That's Peter, I'm sure.
Yeah,
He's your Ward 4 party house problem.
Trying to get a permit, walking the people through getting a permit. And so those are the things that I love to do. I love working for Ward 4. Not all the city stuff pleases me. And but I do my best for Ward 4. So.
All right. Well, John, it's been a pleasure. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for taking time out to come see us today.
Thank you. And if anybody want to walk for me, I cannot walk very well. I'm only a one-legged guy, so these heels.
Somebody come knock on doors for you, right?
Change it to walk and roll for Missoula, so you can get a scooter if you want.
There you go.
Okay.
All right. Thanks, John. All right, we're going to come right back. 721-1290 is our number. We have one more candidate to visit with, Greg Strandberg. He's going to be joining us in the next half hour after this timeout. So stay with us.
Great.
Hey, we're back on Talkback, 721-1290. It's Political Forum Day, City Council, Ward 4, and we've already spoken with two, Jesse Ramos, John Wilkins, and now Greg Strandberg. He is another candidate who's joining us here in the studio. So.
All right. Yeah, so welcome to the show, Greg.
Hey, thanks for having me.
I guess let's kick things off by introducing yourself and telling us why you're running for Ward 4.
Well, my name is Greg Strandberg, and I've run for office a few times. I'm running for city council this time, mainly because I think the tax situation has gotten out of control. City spending is out of control, and We just need some people to hold the city accountable.
How do you distinguish yourself from Jesse Ramos, who was on earlier? He had a very similar introductory pitch to you.
Yeah, we have a lot of the same issues. We're both talking about taxes and such. I guess I'm a little bit older than him. I don't have quite as good of a job as him. I just think I've done a little bit more digging into the city budget, the city's comprehensive annual financial report, and other things. I've been doing that for a couple of years, and I just think I feel a better grip on the issues.
So tell us what you found. If you've been digging, are there
Okay.
bodies in there or what?
Yeah, well, there's a 277-page City of Missoula Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and Audit for fiscal year ended June 30th, 2016. That's the name of this document. And we find that in 2007, total primary government expenses were $47 million. In 2016, they were $78 million. So we're going way up here. Net portion of total primary government in 2007, it was $11 million. The net position in 2016, we're at negative $2.7 million. So we're really going in the wrong direction here. And also, we have a big discrepancy between income and expenses. In 2007, it was $21 million. Last year, it was $47 million. So we have it. We're just going in the wrong direction.
Now, those 47, those are expenses, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So our expenses are totally outpacing our revenue. Last time I looked, we had about about $120 million in expenses each year, but we only have $6 million in revenue.
So, I mean, I think that most people would see those numbers and be like, well, it's obvious what happened. We got a water company.
Yeah.
Is that mainly what's going on here?
Well, that accounts for $140 million of the city's $250 million long-term bonding debt that we have right now. And the water company only cost $90 million, but we wanted another $50 million for that in case problems crop up in the future.
The just-in-case fund.
When you're making $25 million rounding errors, I think it was smart to set aside $50 million.
Yeah, I think Jesse Ramos said it good. He said, this kind of smacks of fraud here to have such a big $25 million accounting error that they found out about last night. And like you said, it was a private citizen that found this out.
Yeah, that's the thing that I found a little fishy was that it was a private citizen that found it. It came to city council after she brought it to me, the public. But the way she found it is they just changed the paperwork. They didn't run it through city council. They didn't have a vote on it. They just changed the paperwork. And I thought that was kind of interesting. I wonder if the city would have admitted it had lied to everybody if they hadn't been caught outright.
I highly doubt it.
Well, now, and again, in the private sector, if this would have happened, then whoever was in charge of that particular enterprise would have been called into the boss's office and said, a buck here and there, that's okay, but $25 million, that's a little bit much. So, see ya.
Yeah,
I mean, do you think, let me put it this way, if you were the mayor or if you were in charge of the city government and you found out that this kind of discrepancy had existed, what would you do as the chief executive of the city?
Well, I think you'd have to have a long talk with Dale Bickle, right? Isn't he in charge of that?
Well, he's the chief administrative officer for the city.
I mean, I don't know. I think you probably have to fire some people over this, or else you'd have to expect that your own job as mayor would be gone, because it's just, how do you account for this $25 million that they didn't even know about? And how come none of these city councilors knew about it? Why aren't they digging into this 372-page City of Missoula budget and figuring this out? And I can't really blame them, because I've dug into it a lot. And when you get into the various agencies and departments, almost all of the big ticket items are simply listed as miscellaneous expense. And we have $37 million in miscellaneous expenses in the city budget. And I called up some agencies about that, like the Parking Commission. I was like, what is this $622,000 in miscellaneous expense? And he had no idea. And he said, I'll call you back. Well, he never called me back.
Huh. That's crazy.
Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the campaign, though. When it comes to you're running against two other candidates we've already had on, so I kind of want to give you a chance to kind of respond to them and their positions. Let's go with Mr. Wilkins. So Mr. Wilkins has been in Missoula city government for a while now.
4 terms.
And you haven't, successfully run a campaign yet. So
Nope.
when it comes to that, I mean, why should we choose you over John?
Well, I think if you're paying property taxes, you've seen your taxes go up 95% over the past 12 years since Engen's been in office, for most of Wilkins' tenure as well. And you have to ask yourself, where's this money going? And how is it benefiting me and my family? And I think it's not benefiting you at all. We're spending $3 million on pedestrian bridges to nowhere, but we can't even plow our side streets. We can't even fix potholes. We're so focused on catering to a small but very vocal minority in this town that we forget about the majority of people that are driving around each day and got real everyday concerns. And the city council is not really concerned about this. They focus a lot. When they don't have a lot of time, they'll do, fancy commemorative day kind of things, while they ignore the fact that our roads are just deteriorating, and their spending is out of control. And people are on fixed budgets. If you're on Social Security, boy, I don't know where you're getting all this extra money. And people are losing their homes in some cases.
When it comes to homes, that's one of the issues both of the other candidates chatted a little bit about. What do you feel as a way for Missoula, if there is a role for the city government to play, in making property purchasable or rent affordable?
Yeah, that's a tough one because I keep on hearing, well, they got to subsidize it. Well, that means that your taxes are going to go up. And if they don't subsidize it, well, then you got to be making a lot more money to afford this stuff. But right now that we know that construction projects in Missoula in 2007, we had 1,600 total projects with a value of $89 million. In 2016, we only had 1,500 projects, although the value has gone up to $117 million. So we're actually building less than we were 10 years ago. So I don't really think there's going to be any more affordable housing for many, many years, and I think it's going to become more unaffordable.
Well, I do a real estate show once a week, okay? And one of the things that we talk about all the time, when you look at other communities around the state, say Bozeman or Kalispell or Great Falls or Billings, they have large areas outside the city that can be developed for, if you want to call it affordable housing. Missoula is an anomaly because we live in this little tiny valley that is cut off by mountains all around, and it just seemed to me like over and over and over again, we need more open space. We need more open space. Well, the problem is every time you add open space, you make the remaining amount of space that's left that much more expensive to use and build. Now, I love open space, softball fields, soccer fields, it's great, but there's got to be a limit to that somewhere, or am I off base?
Yeah, we've open space bonded ourselves out of affordable housing. It's as simple as that. And then when we have some land, like where the new Missoula Regional Sports Complex is, which I never see anybody using, but which they water to death, we could have put a lot of affordable housing there probably, but we choose not to. And then when they are building things like down in the Sawmill District, it's mainly catering to more affluent crowd.
I will say I've been using the Fort soccer fields every weekend lately.
Attaboy. Well, we're up against our
Is anybody else using that?
Yeah, there's lots of teams out there playing.
Yeah. Greg Strandberg joining us in studio. We'd love to have your calls. Question 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309. One of the things about taxes is that Missoula very seldom has a tax they haven't voted themselves for. So who are you going to blame? Well, we're going to come right back with more of Talk Back in a moment. Okay, we're back, and this is Talk Back. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309, or Facebook, of course. John King is over there joining us. Greg Strandberg here in the studio running for Ward 4. All right.
So let's talk a little bit to a phone call. This is our phone line. Martin is on there.
As we do this, Martin, you're on with Greg Strandberg. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, I've lived in Missoula since early 70s, and I guess when you come to talk about open space, I understand what's being said, but I also think it's kind of a temporary and somewhat possibly immature reaction to why people live in Missoula. This isn't everywhere else. And, like you complain about the bridge to nowhere. That's, to me, in 20 years, that's going to be an icon. That's going to be something when that whole area gets developed that is a very important contribution. But this is what it looks like when those projects are started. And I look up on the hill and I see the creep, as the houses fill in areas. I remember when that was all open, and, that's okay. But our sister city in Germany, 600 years ago, decided that it was not going to build above a certain area because that's what defined the community. We're in a valley. If I wanted to live in a valley that was filled with houses up and over the mountains, I'd go to California. So I guess I see there is a limit, and we're seeing that limit.
So Martin, what's your question for Greg? Because he's our candidate.
The question is, I want to know what he feels the ultimate limit would be for Missoula if you want to fill in all of the open spaces or more of them. How do you know when to draw the line?
Well, that's a good question.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Really sure. I do know that people, if you want to build up, people complain. If you want to build out, people complain. So it seems like people aren't going to be happy either way. We got a low open space all around us. For instance, Rattlesnake Wilderness area just to the north of us. I don't know. Do we need open spaces on every hill? We don't have them, and they're going away. We just had a huge land sale up on the South Hills, and that's going to be developed. And as more private property owners sell their land as the prices soar and they want to retire, you're gonna see it. And government can't buy it all up because government doesn't have the money.
I agree, but as running for city council, the tough decisions may land on your desk. So, what does it look like in say 20 years in Missoula when people want to move up Sentinel? The university has to sell some land or something; it's forced to. Or the top of South Hills, up and over the top of South Hills, the knob that's still preserved up on the southeast, or Blue Mountain or something like that, where there's pressure to sell or trade Forest Service land. I mean, how do you decide, since you're running, what's your philosophy that would cause you to say no to a developer?
Just real quick, how would the Missoula City Council even have a vote on what was built on Blue Mountain?
Well, I don't know. Obviously, it's outside. But
I guess
it's the concept.
It's not even a real choice that a city council person would have.
Maybe zoning, possibly.
Choose any of the others then. I'm just wondering. It's easy to make the problem be somebody else's, but what do you think? I mean, because ultimately, little decisions add up to big ones.
Well, I think you should probably have a vote on it, either at the ballot box or via some polls or via how many people are coming down to the city council and speaking their mind. And if you got a lot of people saying, let's keep it open, you should probably go with that majority opinion.
So you think that's okay, even if they say, we do not want to fill in these spaces?
If that's what the majority of people want. I'm not too concerned about developers because developers seem to be doing quite fine right now.
Okay.
All right, Martin, thanks for the call.
Thanks.
Appreciate it. 721-1290 is our number, 1-800-568-5309.
Let's get your take on the issues that have come up. What about the Missoula City Cemetery?
Oh, I think I wrote some letters to the two companies affected by that, and I said I disagree with this. I don't think the city should be edging into this. And the whole reason that the city is doing that is because they're desperate for money. They're looking for new revenue sources like crazy. That's why Marion supports the local option sales tax. And this isn't going to help you or your family at all. It's just going to help the city continue its out-of-control spending spree.
What about the eco-compost acquisition?
That was a huge mistake. We paid $3 million for that. We have to inject another $4 million just to keep it a viable enterprise. We should have, and I can tell why the guy wanted to sell it so bad because the equipment was all run down. We should have just allowed it to remain on the market and had another private business come in and take that over. The city doesn't have the money for that right now. We just bought a water company.
So let me ask you this, Greg. Well, we have a caller. Let's get that first. Callers come first. Jim, good morning. You're on Talkback. Go ahead, sir.
Oh, good morning. I just heard a comment, though, that really disturbed me. He said that, well, it's the will of the people that decide whether or not somebody can develop their land. I remember as a little kid living up the Rattlesnake, that was all undeveloped. There's not a single chunk of land in Missoula that wasn't at one time a field. And since when do other people have the right to tell a landowner what he can or cannot do with his land? If you're going to take that philosophy, there'd be no houses here. It's just not right to let people vote on who can develop their land. It's wrong.
All right. Thanks for the call. So do you agree?
Yeah, and that's kind of why I brought up that big, huge land sale we had in the South Hills recently. That's a private developers or private citizens selling their land. I'm sure a developer is going to buy that up, and they're going to develop it. And there's nothing we can say about that because guess what? It's a private thing. And, hey, that's fine because that's how America works.
There is a free market way that the public can acquire land. They can choose to buy it as a public space from a private individual. Even if a lot of people, there's other ways around it. Or you can get a community to get together and say, we would like to invest in making this an open area, whatever. So you don't necessarily have to tell builders they can't build on their land.
We're gonna take a quick break, come right back. This is a 1-minute timeout. We still have all 4 lines open for Greg Strandberg running for Ward 4 in the Missoula City Council. What do you think? Because this is your town. We'll be right back. This is Talkback. Just about 7 minutes left in our program. Greg Strandberg, candidate for Ward 4 at Missoula City Council. In studio with us right now, I want to thank our other guests, Jesse Ramos, John Wilkins, both with us today. Marilyn, you're on Talkback. Go ahead.
Good morning. So the government there, we've heard, keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Well, government everywhere keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger. So have you seen any places where we can stop the spending, where the cuts on spending can be made? Because we always hear, the services will be cut if, don't have the money. How about spending cuts? Spending cuts, spending cuts. Do you have any ideas on that?
Okay, thanks, Marilyn. So what do you think?
Yeah, that's kind of why I dug into the Missoula budget and I found those $37 million in miscellaneous expenses. And that's why I started calling up some of the agencies and asking them, hey, what are these? And then they don't know. And then the city council doesn't seem to know. We need to start listing these miscellaneous expenses for what they actually are in the budget. So we can have a line by line item budget. And maybe that'll boost it up to 600 pages.
Now, wouldn't that come out if the city had a professional audit? Or wouldn't that be part of the...
They need a professional audit. That's what one of Lisa Tripke is talking about. They put out this audit report every year, but again, it's got all these miscellaneous things listed. We need to go line by line and figure out where we can make those cuts.
So, Greg, I've heard that the city used to release a fairly vivid explanation of its expenditures, but as of last March, that they have stopped producing this material.
Huh. Well,
do you know? I don't know. I guess you've been digging. I was wondering if you know if that's true or not.
I don't know. I wish they would still put that detailed information. But if I was Mayor Engen, I probably wouldn't want to, because the city expenses are so out of control and elections coming up this year. I wouldn't want people to know how much is being wasted on certain items that could be cut. And when you add up $10,000 here, $20,000 there, you got millions of dollars. And that might mean instead of raising taxes 4%, we could raise them 1%, and then next year hopefully we could have 0%, or even start going negative and get them lower.
Well, one of the things that I talk about a lot when it comes to our financial situation in Missoula. Missoula is a very generous, community. First of all, they voted $158 million a couple of years ago for new schools. All right, they voted $41 or $42 million 6 years ago for the new Parks project out at Fort Missoula. Okay, now they've just voted themselves another $35 million for a new public library. So, we can't complain too much because many of the increases that we're seeing in our tax bill are self-imposed, and because these are things that we thought was worth it, that as a community, a lot of people didn't vote for it, but, we live here, so we bear that burden. So how do you feel about that as opposed to the things that you're dealing with things in the city budget that we have no control over?
Well, we're doing a couple $1 million worth of studies each year alone, and that's something that people don't vote on. And we need to start looking at things that aren't being voted on and where we can make cuts. For instance, last night, the city council, just for 1 week alone of funding city government, they had $1.3 million in accounts payable checks that they wrote out. They spent another $285,000 for a wastewater facility plan, and they spent $33,000 for a community bike park design. Now, these are all things that aren't voted on. And we need to start saying, hey, listen, let's hold on here because we do have all these obligations like you just mentioned. We need to stop spending so much on the want list, start focusing on the need list, and we just need to rein in this spending.
So let's, we got about 3 or 4 minutes left in the show before we run out of time. We've talked a lot about city expenses. What are some other issues that you think need to be brought to the fore?
Well, I think a big one is our roads. I drop my son off at Lewis and Clark Elementary every morning, and in the winter, for about 4 or 5 months a year, it's very difficult to park because the side streets are not plowed. And this happens right after snow. I don't know, do we not have enough plows? Do we not have enough drivers? And if we're going to spend $3 million on this pedestrian bridge to nowhere, I think we can definitely spend some more money to get these side streets plowed. And I think more people in Missoula want that. Our potholes are another one. These are issues we need to look at.
So roads and services as far as the actual kind of day-to-day grind sort of, but not on expenditures that you see as, I guess, not as beneficial.
Yeah.
So I take it you don't like, what do you think of the URD system that we were in?
Oh, I think it's just abused. It's like, somebody who tried a drug, liked it, and got addicted to it. We got to go cold turkey on those URDs or whatever they are. Same with that
urban renewal district.
Yeah, same with taxing urban financing. We're just abusing the system. It's not helping us at all anymore.
Okay, we have time for one more caller. Sue, quickly, you're on Talkback. Go ahead, ma'am.
Yeah, I was just wondering what's going on with I think it's the 5th and 6th Avenue study about turning one of the lanes into a bike lane. Wondering what he thinks about that.
Yeah, this is another example of the city government just catering to a loud but vocal minority while ignoring the majority of people. Most of us drive. We don't need to reduce Higgins Avenue to 3 lanes. We don't need to have a bike path on 1 lane. I rode my bike in this town for 5 years, including winter. I didn't have a car, and I got by just fine. I think people are getting by just fine now. And if you look around, you'll find that there are a lot more cars than there are bikes, and we need to get realistic here.
All right, Sue, thanks.
Thank you.
Appreciate the call. All right. we have exactly 2 minutes left in the program. So if you don't mind, Greg Strandberg, you're on your soapbox now. I want you to tell our thousands and thousands of listeners, there's a bunch of them out there, why they should vote for you for Ward 4.
Well, I call myself a conservative Democrat. I think we got serious problems. We've got hardly any good jobs in this town that are paying decent wages. I got 5 part-time jobs myself, about minimum wage category. I'll never be able to buy a house here because housing prices are out of control. 10 years ago, about 113,000, now they're 255,000. Our taxes are going up like crazy. I don't pay property taxes, thankfully, but my rent goes up occasionally. We got our young people moving out of town because they can't find jobs. I don't know. We got a bunch of yuppies moving in, and housing prices are going up. It just seems like there's a lot of we're losing hope here. We're going in the wrong direction. The mayor and his rubber stamp city council are driving this town to the ground, have been for years. And I'm pessimistic because we got 70,000 people in this town. Only 20,000 of them vote. So, and I think this year I wouldn't be surprised if Mayor Engen gets his seat again. All the rubber stamps get their seat again, because I think a lot of people just don't care, and it's really unfortunate because it's costing us money and our kids are leaving because of it.
All right. Well, now, how can folks contact you if they want to donate to your cause, or do you have a website or a Facebook page?
I have the most visited political website in the state. It's called BigSkyWords.com.
Big Sky Words?
Yep, Big Sky Words.
All right. Well, Greg, it's a pleasure having you on the show. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
All right, best of luck to you. So what's coming up on tomorrow's fabulous radio program, John?
We will hear from some people discussing the ongoing president selection at the University of Montana. And then at the very beginning of the show, we'll hear about a new initiative concerning bathrooms they're trying to put on the ballot coming next year.
Aha. All right. Well, you guys have a great day, and thanks for joining us here on Talk Back. Well, join us tomorrow morning at 6 for Montana Morning. We'll see you then.